Today's guest is Trevor Griffith, a Marine, bodybuilder, gym owner, and carnivore coach. Trevor is the true embodiment of resilience, going from sick and bedridden to healthy and thriving. Trevor, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, my friend.
Yes, it's definitely my pleasure to have you on, and you have an absolute fascinating story. You had some health issues and scares. Can you talk about or paint the picture of kind of your journey and some of the obstacles that you had to overcome to get where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the more you learn about health in general, the more you kind of see outside of, oh, I think it happened, 3 months ago, right? The more you learn, the more you can trace it back to, man, when I was a little kid, I was struggling with strep throat or all these issues and I kept getting antibiotics, right? So I was that kid, always sick. But ultimately, where the straw that broke the camel's back, yeah, that's that saying. It was 2.5 years ago. I did get out of the military. I owned the gym at this point. Um, and I had like four jobs, dude, because we were doing Dave Ramsey. We were paying off debt. We being me and my wife. And I would have said I was operating at a very high level, but I was consuming, I don't even know, 1,250 to 1,500 megs of caffeine. So just a crazy amount. Energy drinks, coffee, whatever I could on top of pre-workout. And I noticed that my energy was starting to fade away. And that was even on top of all those things. And then it went from energy to 10 seconds, maybe even 30 seconds, where I wouldn't pass out and hit the ground, but it was like, it's hard to even explain. I became mute. You couldn't talk to me or I couldn't respond to you for those 10 to 30 seconds. And then I'd snap back in. So it was like I disappeared and I came back. That was basically how it started. I just kind of powered through it, doing the man thing, like, oh, whatever, it's not going to affect me. So I did that until it started lasting for like 10 to 30 minutes. And it started happening at one of my jobs, started happening when I was driving. Specifically, one day me and my wife were driving to church and it like was happening. So luckily I got pulled over in time. And then I pretty much checked out for a lengthy period of time. And then from there, I mean, I can go into many things, but I guess we'll just hit on maybe the more severe symptoms. It progressed after I kind of played. I bounced around the hospitals and the specialists. I did that thing. From there, progressed to paralysis, half side of my body, bedridden for 3 months. I did forget who my wife and my parents were. I lost like 40 plus pounds within 2 months. Hair started falling out. Just all kinds of weird symptoms like tingly, vibrating, all weird symptoms. And now at this point, I understand what's kind of going on. But yeah, that was awful. So I had bipolar, schizophrenia. I was saying off the wall stuff like, yeah.
That's
So that,
so scary. That's scary.
yeah.
I can't imagine. And you were pretty like coming out of the military. Were you pretty fit? Were you doing like athletic endeavors or anything prior to any of this stuff kind of happening?
Yeah, so I've pretty much been athletic my whole life. Now, that doesn't mean my diet was on par when I was younger, because when you're younger, you think you're Superman. But pretty much the military and beyond, I lived a bodybuilding lifestyle. I did some modeling in there, so I always had to be, this was probably to a fault, low fat. So I maintained probably 3 to 10% all the time,
Wow.
and meaning like I did it the bodybuilding way. So I ate no fat. So that was probably, definitely not a good thing. But as far as when people are like, just eat paleo, I did that. Like I lived that life and I still got super sick.
So now you're going to the doctors. Are they kind of hitting the nail on the head, like, oh, we kind of got this, or are they just kind of like pushing you all over, like, go see a specialist here, go see a specialist there?
Yeah. So, Man, I think I looked back. So I sometimes I look back at like lab tests or because I do understand now and I'm like what doctors missed or if it's crazy. But I think at one point in time I went to the ER like 17 times in a month. Dude, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just because I was like lost, man. Like completely lost. It was awful. Um and then of course I went to my VA doctor and then they just sent me to like so many specialists. And from there it was just crazy. At one what pushed me away from seeing doctors was one doctor said that your adrenals and your thyroid have nothing to do with each other. So I stopped going to see him after he said that because at this point I was like, I'm not sure that you know what you're talking about. And then there was a doctor at a pretty high up institution that I went and saw. It was an endocrinologist. And because my cortisol was so high, they were like, well, we can do exploratory surgery to see if you have a tumor on your pituitary. And I was like, no, I don't want you to just go up there and guess. So that made me leave there too.
Wow. So now you're getting bounced around a little bit. I could only imagine the frustration that you're going through. So where do you kind of take the avenue of kind of either doing your own research or finding out or trying things that like, hey,
Mhm.
this is not working with these doctors. I got to take this into my own hands.
Yeah, so this is probably it gets worse before it gets better. So that's the funny part. So I landed on medical medium. That was the first avenue. I don't know if you've heard of this guy. He's basically like a hardcore vegan, but it's very specific and it's a lot of supplementation. Very odd protocols. So I did that for, oh my goodness, I don't even know, a year, maybe 6 months to a year. Thought I wasn't doing it good enough. So then I went to even more hardcore with he has versions of his program that are like certain days that are more hardcore. I did that and then I went raw fruitarian. So I only ate raw fruit. And each level I studied, right? And I was studying supplements and all this stuff and I was studying under a doctor at the time too. So I'm learning all these protocols during this period. And then ultimately, I ended up just getting sicker, skinnier, more hair falling out. My nails were like splitting vertically, so not even like chipping off horizontal. They were like splitting down the middle. Um, just like no nutrition in my body. But I was really naive and hurting, you know what I mean? So it was one of those things that was hard to see. And then I kind of just kept progressing until I ultimately landed on like an animal based, like a Paul Saladino. And I did that for a little bit. And I have yeast issues in my body where I developed them throughout this journey. And it was feeding my yeast issues because they were getting really bad. And then from there, that's what led me to carnivore.
So it's like from the sugar, right? Too
Mm-hmm.
much putting the sugar is going to feed it. What type of yeast things were going on?
So man, I had everything. Some of it I still battle. So like the tinea versicolor, like I still have that. But like toenail issues, jock itch. And then you obviously get the internal symptoms of like brain fog or just like delayed thinking, stuff like that. So I was still battling that when I was doing the fruit and honey gig.
Mm-hmm. Uh, how did you find? Because everybody has their own like story about how they found carnivore. Was it like a podcast? Somebody brought it to you?
So it was a couple of things. Um, I actually have a farmer buddy who's been doing it for probably a year longer than I have. He's just like a good old boy, dude, but he's a brick house, man. And he had mentioned it to me, but I thought he was kind of crazy. And then it became the only avenue that I hadn't tried. So other than like those exploratory surgeries, it was literally the only thing I didn't try. And I was like, well, whatever. Because I mean, I thought I was dying, man. I was writing wills and all kinds of stuff. So I was like, man, if this takes me out, I'm good. Like, I don't know what else to do.
And at this time, how because you're a young guy. How old are you at this moment when you're like, I need to write my will because just in case kind of deal?
Yeah, so I was probably 31.
Wow.
Yeah, 31. Yeah. Me and my wife, a year into marriage, year and a half into marriage at the time. And yeah, she just got smacked with it, man.
Yeah, but I mean that shows a lot of like fortitude for her, because that's a wow. Just having that happen, and but luckily you had a partner with you
Yeah.
that is there to help you through the journey. Because you were saying like you couldn't even drive at one point, right?
Yeah. I didn't drive for, I mean, 6 months to a year. I didn't even step foot in the gym I owned for a year and a half. Yeah, dude, life shut down for me. I basically stayed in a room for a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
And now your buddy's telling you about carnivore. Before you even like kind of get onto carnivore, there's always like this fear mongering of, whoa, you're gonna eat only meat. What are you talking about? Was your family saying anything? Was there a little pushback, or you just kind of like kept it tight to the chest?
Mm, I didn't really tell a lot of my family because they believe more in kind of the Western medical side of things. So their response to everything I was trying was like, you just need to go to the hospital. Like I hadn't already tried that. So ultimately I kind of kept it from them. My wife's family, I can have conversations and they're deep thinkers. So we talk about stuff like this. And actually a lot of them are doing carnivore now too. So it's cool to see. But yeah, so I guess I probably played it a little closer or tighter to the chest than just being like, this is what I'm doing.
And so you start, you know, animal like animal based pretty much, but
Mm-hmm.
no fruit, no nothing, strict carnivore. What's anything starts to change? Is it like a kind of an immediate aha, or it's like you're slowly feeling a little bit better?
Yeah, so I would say the first 2 weeks to a month, a lot of the brain symptoms went away, like the brain issues. So the depression, the anxiety, just my brain felt more calm. And I was able to approach problems from a more logical basis instead of like an emotional fear basis. And that was huge for me, right? Because I was like grabbing all these straws, like save me, save me, save me. And now I'm at a point where I'm like, wait a minute, what truly makes sense? So that was huge for me in my healing journey. And then from there, it was just like things just started to get better and better.
What were you typically eating? Were you because there's a couple of versions that people are like, I'm gonna get real strict with like watching exactly what I eat. I'm going to like map this out, or more of like the intuitive eater of like I'm just gonna eat until I'm full and that be the end of it.
Yeah. So I would map it out just to see like how many calories I was putting in. And because everything I learned at one point has been proven wrong by what I've learned now, right? So the whole calories in, calories out, all that stuff. Um, my life has proved all that wrong because I was eating for a large part of the time like 3,500 to 6,500 calories, man. Like just crushing meat and fat, and I wasn't like really gaining a crazy amount of weight. My body was just like using it to heal itself. So
Yeah, I think like your brain alone. I had Bill Schindler on at one point, and he was talking about your brain alone is going to take 20%
percent, yeah.
of everything you take in.
Mm-hmm.
And it wants that fat. It wants all of those good nutrients. And it is really hard. It's kind of a mind fuck of like everything that we've been taught. Like I went to, I went to school for physical education. I took a bunch of nutrition courses. I don't use any of that anymore. I mean, me personally, I don't, and it's really hard to be in the education system now when you've kind of seen like you have all these documentaries like Forks Over Knives and Game Changers with James Cameron and
Mm-hmm.
all of these things that we've been told for so long. I know me personally, when I told, because I did vegan as well for a couple of years, and I had not nearly the same situations you had, but my hair was falling out. I had bad gut issues. I could eat all day, every day. I was never satisfied. Bloating was like, oh my God, if I don't see quinoa ever in my life again, I'll be happy. Like I had
Mm-hmm.
so much quinoa in my life, I'd never want to have it again. But we go into now people telling us, oh, carnivore, you're like, that can't be right. There's no way. It's impossible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear. I mean, I still hear it, but it's like, it's also like you're a living proof too. So at some point, people have to be like, wait a minute, wait, that was you? And it's like, yeah, and this is what I did. And like yourself, you lived the other lifestyles prior to, you know what I mean? And it led you to not be healthy. So in my same case, because people will, combat the carnivore with like, well, can't you just add all this stuff in? I'm like, I did that for like 10 years. So it's like, where else do you go? What, you know what I mean?
Yeah, we in the driving the fat down as well. I talk about bro diet on here. That's come up so many times in this podcast of like the bro diet, and
Mm-hmm.
that is what I see a lot of my clients and just people in general or family members. The chicken breasts, the broccoli, the rice. I'm gonna eat a bunch of different meals. It's gonna be very little fat, but then
Mm-hmm.
you keep doing that, your body starts to kind of turn on you. And it just, we've been eating a certain way for millions of years. And all of a sudden it's like,
Yeah.
oh, no, we can't have fat anymore. You got to have, you know, chicken breast
Yeah.
grilled, nothing else.
Yeah. Something
Um,
that hasn't been around for, really that long.
yeah.
So it's like crazy.
I just saw something the other day. I think it was an Anthony Chafee thing where he showed a diagram, and it's like a proven diagram of a human skeletal system in the jaw,
Mm-hmm.
and they were average, a million years ago, whatever it is, or before agriculture. They're like, the average brain size was X amount bigger. They were 5 inches taller than the average now, and their jaws and their teeth were perfect, and the jaws were more defined and stronger. Where you have the average day human, we have a ton of teeth. I mean, there's a whole market, just in like straightening out people's teeth, and
Mm-hmm.
millions of dollars in orthodontists, and baby food is a big thing when we never had baby food before. Like, it didn't exist. You just had your mother's milk, and then when you can eat, you just had real food.
Yeah.
What's the time frame now? So you're getting into carnivore, you start to feel things feeling a little bit better. You're saying that mental fog is gone, anxiety, depression. What's the timeline look like?
So from to right now, or like that progression?
Yeah, the progression of like, is everything, because you mean like your nails, your skin, like, you're mentally starting to feel better, but all these other things, are they starting to heal up as well?
So yes, during the process, I probably healed 90 to 95% of my issues. And that has progressed up until this point. So that was let's call it a 2 year progression, a year and a half, 2 year progression with that. But it led me to the point where I was like, there's still some hangups in my health. And ultimately, what I did is I tested for SIRS. I don't know if you heard of that. Um,
No.
it's basically where your immune system is overreactive. It's chronically hyper like stressed. And that's when like anything you put into your body, it could be pepper or anything like that. Or that's where when someone eats like pork and they're like, man, pork makes me inflame. And a lot of times it is SIRS, or that heightened immune system. So I tested and I do have that. And it's either a biotoxin illness or like a mold based illness. So have you heard of Michaela Peterson?
Yeah, I mean, I think she's talked about something similar of like she eats like, or I think the dad too as well, like mostly lamb, because like grass fed doesn't really
Mm-hmm.
work for her as well.
Yeah. So she actually has SIRS. And that's like a good example of if she throws anything else into her body, she like reacts real hard. And then she goes to her like arthritic type conditions. Um, so that's like a good example and she suffers from it. So she's being treated with a specific protocol for it.
And what can you consume on carnivore versus like things that are carnivore or carnivore-esque, and you're like, no, this doesn't work for me?
So I've actually like built up as we've gone on, right? As I've healed and done certain things, even on carnivore. So I can eat pork. I can eat pretty much eat all your meats. I don't like a lot of seafood. So yeah, sorry about that. But I don't do that great with like milk. It still like inflames my brain. Cheese, things like that. Basically like dairy. I don't do that well with it.
And do you touch like vegetables, like throw that in at all anymore, or any fruits?
No. Now as far as like a healing standpoint, sometimes you want to throw that in to see what your body can handle, right? I view it the same way the gym, right? What could I do and my body respond well to? So I view it the same way with food. It's like I do want to eventually try some things, but I don't want to go back to like forgetting who I am. So it's like a fine line I have to walk, you know?
Yeah, there's and some people are everybody's so different because there's people that can get onto carnivore right away and feel really good and stay there. Whereas a lot of people have to slowly, because like just too much of the oxalate dumping, they have
Mm-hmm.
to slowly progress out of it. And my sister, for example, she wants to do carnivore. She wants to really lose weight. And I'm like, I'm a carnivore advocate, like,
Yeah.
primal foundations. Like I want to get back to the basics of those kind of things. But for her, I think for her to stay on it and to feel good, because she's been going to the allergist for a very long time. She finally went to an allergist that actually told her, like, you need to just like get rid of like a lot of carbohydrates and focus on fatty meats. And she
Mm-hmm.
comes over to me. She goes, yeah, you were right. I was like, I was telling you a year ago. I told you over a year ago. But I think for her, and there's a lot of people that, because they've been on this, like, we're Pop Tart kids. We are
Mm-hmm.
Pop Tart kids. I saw the greatest thing on Instagram the other day was like, we were radical in the 90s. We ate cereal for breakfast. I thought that was the funniest meme I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
But it's true. That's all we've ate. And our bodies are just so accustomed to that. So to throw somebody on carnivore right away, I don't think they'll stick to it
Mm-hmm.
as much as if, well, yours is a different story because you're like, I'm trying this 2 feet in because I've tried everything else.
Mm-hmm.
But I think certain people need to take their time with it and slowly progress. And the natural avenue is like, I'm going to go ketogenic diet, or a quote unquote keto diet, into this carnivore diet.
Mm-hmm.
And now when you eat, are you still tracking everything? Like, I have to hit this many macros, because every person that ever comes up to me is like, well, how much protein are you taking in? Like, that's like always the main concern. But are you tracking things? Or you're just kind of intuitive at this point?
So yeah, I'm just intuitive. The only times I do track is like if someone wants to see, like if they don't believe it, or someone's like, oh, how much do you actually consume? Then I'll just like show them. But outside of that, I eat when I'm hungry. And I don't really think about food any more than that right there. Do I have it in the fridge? Cool. When I'm hungry, I grab it, I cook it up, and I'm done with it. You know what I mean?
And people will look at you like, wow, that's crazy, because they're thinking about food all day, every day, meal prepping. I got 5 meals in my bag for the day.
Mm.
And I mean, you did bodybuilding, right? So how many meals were you eating in a day?
Oh, I mean, yeah, I was probably your six meals. And it's crazy because when you are in that lifestyle, while you're eating a meal, you're thinking about your next meal. So like it never stops.
Yeah. And you can't you do that for so long, you can't operate on it. And it's really, you get into also the binging too after those competitions. And I've talked about it on this podcast 100 times, so people probably like sick of it, but like wrestlers, bodybuilders, anything where you got to actually make weight, like you get into this really bad when you drive the fat down, and then you finally get your hands on like a ton of carbs and junk food. You are going to go a whole weekend and just binge yourself.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, dude. One of my shows, I did that, and before I got off stage, like I had eaten like 4 Pop Tarts. So like when you go in the back, you're still walking off stage. I had eaten like 4 Pop Tarts, just like that. Boom.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
awful.
Because and that's the other edge, or the other blade side of the blade, right? It's, yeah, you step on stage, people look and they admire and they're like, wow, they look so good. But in reality, those people that are walking on like bikini physique, the actual, oh, I can't even think. What's the biggest weight. Is it like, I forget it. Oh, it's like the biggest size because C-bum's like physique, right?
Is it super heavy?
Yeah, super
So
classic.
classic
Yeah.
and then super heavyweight. Yeah.
Yeah, there's physique, whatever it all. And these guys are huge. They're massive. Everybody's like, wow, they're so strong and so healthy. No, they're to near death. When they walk on that stage, they are dehydrated. They have nothing in their body. They are just looking good for the one, show. And then by the time they're off, they're like laying on the floor, probably with like, yeah, a bunch of Pop-Tarts, bunch of whatever. But we see it on the movies, we see it on the magazines, and that's what we aspire to. But most people don't look like that. And even most people that are healthy don't look like that.
No, it's a full-time, like awful job, in my opinion, just because, some of those dudes, if you look back at their videos, they're waking up at 2 or 3 a.m. just to eat chicken and rice. Like that sounds awful.
Yeah. Food freedom it's so liberating to, like, if I want to eat, I'll eat. And like you're saying, like, I have food in the fridge. I'm not worried about it. If I'm hungry, I'll eat. And it's some people that's bananas. They can't put their mind around it. But when you live this lifestyle of your body is actually satiated and you're getting everything you need, you don't have to keep consuming over and over again. So now you're into, you're feeling good. You said you dropped. How much weight did you drop again?
So I dropped like 40, 45 pounds. Yeah.
And then bringing that back, were you just eating and was coming back? Were you also like feeling good and then starting to strength train again?
Yeah, so I was able to step back in the gym on the diet, not outside of it. And then, yeah, my weight just slowly like crept back up to where it's healthy for like my body, right? So I sit around like 205, 210, and I don't have to track, and that's where I'll stay. And obviously, depending if I do like a 24-hour fast or whatever I'm trying to do, I might drop some pounds, but I pretty much stay in that range.
Do you intermittent fasting too? Or is it kind of fast if I need to fast?
So I will do like healing fasts. I will do that. And you get a body to like use as a tool. That's the way I view it, right? So it's like, well, do I believe this will help me in like health? Yes. Well, then let's see what it can do. That's the way I feel about it. Even on the like fitness front, it's like, well, let's see what my body can do, pushing it to this level or getting in this ice bath, right? So yeah.
I gotta get on the ice bath thing. I've yet to like do it. I don't know. Everybody talks about how it's, do it in the morning or wherever, but I'm still trying to figure out when is like the best time, because I've also heard like if you do ice baths, like you have to watch when you strength train, because it could be kind of counterintuitive. But I don't know if you've like kind of dialed that in, if you're going to do ice baths.
So I've actually heard about that. So I had one, got rid of it because I didn't like it, and we upgraded a little bit. I was doing it first thing in the morning. Like I would literally wake up, take my dogs out, go right into the ice bath. And that was for many reasons. One, I wanted it to wake me up, right? That cortisol spike. And then two, I wanted to do it because it was like the thing I didn't want to do at all. You get up and you're like, oh, I just want to go back to bed. And then it was like, nope, well, we're going in the ice bath. So that's why I did it. Now after the workout, I actually heard that because it's like, it helps for like soreness and like recovery. It like slows that process down or takes away from the process of developing more muscles. Like,
Yeah,
that's what I heard around that.
I gotta do a little more digging myself and try to figure out, or at least offset the days. Cause I'm not sure. And I kind of want to get into this with you. My regimen now is way different than when I was, in my 20s. I don't work out as much. I'd say 3 to 5 sessions, whatever that may be, but it's real. It's more technique and form focused and time under tension and doing it right. And I don't care what the weight is. Like the weight isn't that big of a deal, because if I'm trying to really push and I got to compensate, I'll take the weight off and check my ego versus me 20, 22, 23, I'm like, this with this weight's going up no matter what today kind of deal. Do you continuously train, every day, or is it more or less than you usually do?
So it's less than when I was like in that bodybuilding phase. But I'm able to build muscle faster and recover faster. And my strength increases at a faster rate now than when it did, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's how you feel, but I only work like, 4 to 5 times. And that's mostly because I own a gym, right? I like to go in and, kind of hang out with people. But so I only hit like 4 to 5 times when I used to go like twice every day.
Yeah. And I think there's this more, the more you go in the gym, the more the results you're going to get. But really, and recovery for me that's my big push to my clients. I'm the performance coach at my school. So I'll have kids in there after school in the fitness center. And then I'll work with athletes. And I joke around. I said, half my job is telling them to just stop. That's half my job. You need to stop. Well, I got the weight up. I said, you should have stopped 3 reps ago. You got to take it back. And there's kids that want to keep doing the same things, and they coming in, they're doing arms every day just because they want it to look good. I'm like, if you're really worried about performance, you're really worried about strength, you need to take a couple steps back. You need to give yourself time to recover. And then do you like separate them? Like, you're going to do a push, a pull, and legs, and make sure that you have a day in between, or just taking big like rest in between your sets?
So my workouts are relatively fast paced, kind of like a hit basis. They're probably 35 to 45 minutes. And I do pretty much a full body. So I went to a functional patterns. That's what it was. I went to a couple of their seminars and stuff. And man, a lot of the cross body, like running, fighting style movements, I can really appreciate those. So I incorporate a lot of those, kettlebells, stuff like that. Just like not your normal workout, not just like your bench and things like that.
Okay. Yeah, this got to feel a lot different than what you used to do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was your just like typical meathead. Hopefully that doesn't offend anybody, but it was just dude, bench squat deadlifts. It was like getting those numbers huge, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Cardiovascularly, is it just like, hey, you're taking care of that with those hit workouts, or do you do cardio that's long, short?
Sometimes I'll get like a spur to go on a really long run, which I don't know why. So sometimes I'll run like 5 miles, just like I'm gonna go run 5. But I do a lot of like sprints. I like sprints.
I'm not fast. So I try to do sprints. If there's a hill that's not that far from me, I'll do it. I know I have to do more of
Yeah.
just getting it in quick and just doing like a few, because you can't sprint all day. Like there's a tipping point, but it's nice to actually like go out and do some miles just to see if you kind of still got it, as long as you're not pushing. With the gym, the Hall of Heroes, do you have like, is this all personal training? Is this just a gym people can go to?
Yeah, so it's a roughly 12,000 square foot facility. And it's pretty much got, I mean, everything A through Z, cardio, aerobic room, free weights, machines. So we're just like a local, but it's a pretty big facility. I mean, so yeah, I don't do any in-person training. I moved completely to online.
Okay. And then
Yeah.
your coaching program, and I've heard you mention this before, you know, is this program, or the people that you work with, I'm only working with carnivores, or it's like I'm going to take on anybody and work with anybody to get to their goals?
So I will take on anybody, but obviously I do have an avenue where I think people should go. Now, that doesn't mean if you come to me and you're a vegan, am I going to take you to carnivore? No, but if you ask me, why is this happening? Right? Why is my hair falling out? Or why do I feel like I have no energy? I'm going to say, well, there's certain things in meat that you are lacking if you're not supplementing. In reality, you're probably still lacking because you're not getting the full nutrition of what it originally should be. You're trying to take a portion of it, right? So I guess I'll kind of mess with everything, but I always point towards a keto carnivore avenue.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be, I always talk about, it doesn't have to be dogmatic, right? We always have to like respect people's opinions. And it's all about getting them healthy. Whatever route that might lead them to there is, you as a coach are there to support.
Mm-hmm.
We can't, just say you have to do it how I do it all the time, because that might not work for them. What are some
Sure.
plans coming up for you? Is it just sticking with the online programming? Is it different ventures or anything?
Um, so we're working on the gym and I'm working on coaching, really like squaring things away, building back end stuff for coaching, apps and all that stuff. It's kind of a lot, to be honest. And then the gym, we're getting to a point where I want to expand it into the functional health realm. So, meaning like, red lights or oxygen therapy, things like that, where people who are battling kind of more severe issues can come and utilize those too.
Oh, that's cool. Like for the red lights for like sauna.
Yeah. So, I mean, it could be the infrared, it could be just a base red light. And then the hyperbaric chamber is what the
Oh
oxygen.
wow.
Yeah, super cool.
Have you been doing those yourself?
So I haven't, but I have done oxygen therapy. I've done ozone therapy. Man, I've done a lot. But that is one area where I feel will heal or help heal many things, right? Because a lot of things lower oxygen, especially toxicities, disease, cancer, all these things lower oxygen. So what do you think happens when we just, put more in?
Mm. Yeah, I gotta mess around with some of those things. I feel like my recovery, the way that I view my recovery is lots of movement that is going to get blood flow and let me actually take the time in my muscles to recover. So not going at a high intensity for too long, but also programming recovery into my workouts of not going exhausting sets, or I very rarely go to failure. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's if you're going to failure, like why are you going to failure? Is it because you're competing in a powerlifting, or are you going to failure because you think your muscles are going to look even better
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow? But is there any for somebody who's trying to get into carnivore, and as you work with people, is there any tips that you usually typically give them when they're kind of a little hesitant in getting into the space, or at least trying it out?
Um, yeah, so I would say be informed, right? Whatever avenue you want to go down, if you want to be a vegan, you should know what that looks like and the potential complications, right? So I also think you should be informed with the carnivore avenue, but kind of like what you were mentioning with your sister is I believe most people should approach it slowly, right? They should hang out in keto and kind of start feeling out foods like, well, maybe this one doesn't cause any complication because maybe you don't have to go carnivore. I don't believe everyone needs to be carnivore. And then you're so primal, right? When you think about it, there would be times where we didn't have meat, so we would have depended on, maybe vegetables or maybe like a potato or something similar, like a root vegetable, right? So it's like we're built to supplement other things when we don't have meat. So to say like everyone has to be a carnivore, I don't necessarily believe that. Now, could we operate optimally at carnivores? Probably, most people. So,
Yeah, do you ever struggle with clients with when they're trying to get into a keto or ketogenic, of swaying them away from the marketing of the stuff in boxes?
mhm.
Because I feel on my end, that is a very hard thing to sway people because they're so used to it. They're so used to like grabbing stuff off the shelf.
Mm-hmm. And it's the it's the convenience thing, right? Like people just like they just want things quick, easy. And instead, honestly, carnivore is that. But it's like, no, I have to have a box and do this. So yeah, it's like habitual convenience. And a lot of people too, I couldn't think of this earlier, but a lot of people think they're moderators but really they're abstainers. I would say most people are actually like abstainers, but they're like, oh no, I can have a few drinks. It's like, well, you're plastered. You know what I mean? Like you're an abstainer. You're just kind of fibbing to yourself. And I believe it's the same way with food. People will be like, oh yeah, I'll crush this keto thing. And then they're like, 5 keto treats in, they're like, wait a minute, what's happening?
Yeah. Oh, I'm not losing weight. I'm not
Yeah.
losing weight, but I did all the keto. I got a keto ice cream. I got a keto milkshake thing. I go, okay, listen to yourself.
Yeah.
Listen to what you're eating. You just said you got keto ice cream. Yeah, but it's keto. I'm like, and I always say, if you got to read the ingredients and there's more than like 3, like it's probably not that good.
Mm-hmm. Agreed with
Um,
that.
Sleep. Question for you
Mm-hmm.
is any things that you, because you're into like the ice baths and the sauna infrared. Is there anything that you do for sleep?
Yeah, I've done a lot there too, right? I've done a lot of supplements. I mean, name it, I'm probably taking it. But I don't have to be there right now. So mainly I guess right now I do the really dark room. So like the blackout curtains. My room is probably 60, 65 degrees when we're sleeping. Very cold. We have like a wake light. I think that's what it's called. So when I wake up, it's like a red light that slowly gets to being a bright orange light, and then it'll shift into music. So it's like it's not a cortisol spike right when you wake up. I try to get in bed 9:30, and I'll do a little reading, slow my myself down, my mind down, and then go to sleep. I
And like off the screens completely?
I'll kick my phone off Wi-Fi off into airplane mode so it's not emitting anything. Yeah, I used to nose tape, mouth tape. I slept on a grounding mat. I mean, dude, I did everything.
Yeah, that's my area. Like that is like the cold room definitely helps. I tell everybody like get that down. And also, I don't know if you've messed around with taking hot showers before
Mm-hmm.
instead of, because some people are like, oh, I'll take a cold shower. Well, that really heats your
Spikes you.
body. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I want to get your body's like, oh, I'm cold. I need to heat it up. But if you take a hot shower and then you go to bed, then your body's like, I gotta cool this down. So with the cold room plus that, but I've heard the wake light before. I mean, I'm still my Apple phone just rant like it's going off.
Yeah.
And but you're right, but it actually makes sense because I'm getting
Mm-hmm.
up real quick and then I'm like, all right, I'm up, I'm going. But
Mm-hmm.
that's a nice way to ease into the day.
Mm-hmm.
A wake light. I might have to get that, but
It's nice, man.
I'm gonna have to try it out. Well, Trevor, thank you so much for again sharing your story and just taking us on that path of,
Mm-hmm.
this could be some things that are going to or might be affecting somebody now. And like just hearing you as an inspiration and your resilience, I think that the listeners get a ton of from this. And thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Absolutely. I appreciate just being here and talking. Hopefully it can help whoever. And I think if I had to leave a last little comment is your body wants to heal. Just give it the time and get out of the way, right? It can be that simple. Not the process, but it can literally be that simple.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thanks for coming again. And thank you for everybody listening to the Primal Foundations podcast.